Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to AML Transformation in APAC, adopting generative AI to optimize the cost of AML compliance operations, basically our topic. And we're thrilled to have everyone joining us from across the APAC region and beyond. My name is Joseph Ibitola, and I would be the moderator for today's enlightenment session. So today we will be diving into the current and future landscape of anti-money laundering compliance and the transformative role of generative AI. And our esteemed speakers would provide invaluable insights and would answer all our questions on how technological innovation is revolutionizing AML operations. Also, just to note, everyone, we want this to be an interactive experience, so we encourage you to send in your questions at any point. During the webinar, you would find a tiny box by your side where you can type in your questions should you want to type it, or you could ask it at the end of the session, because there would also be a Q&A where you can type your questions, like I said, and we'll address all of the questions during the conclusion of today's session. Without any further delay, we'll start with our first segment. So yeah, it's my pleasure to introduce Leonard Komov, our head of in-crime solutions, who would be our keynote speaker for today. And Leonard brings a wealth of knowledge from his extensive experience in financial crime and compliance. And today he will shed the light on AML challenges specific to the APAC region and the crucial role of tech innovations in compliance. Leonard, the mic is yours.
Thank you, Joseph, and hi, everyone. I think if I want to set the scene for this webinar, I could not but speak about the recent AML investigation in Singapore, which I believe will shape AML compliance opportunities and challenges, not only in Singapore itself, but in the region as a whole. So in August this year, Singaporean police officers arrested 10 individuals and charged them with money laundering in suspicion of laundering funds originating from organized crime related to illicit gambling, online scams, and human trafficking. So this investigation was launched more than 2 years ago upon receipt of suspicious transaction report from one of the financial institutions in Singapore. And then this investigation is not only remarkable because the authorities managed to arrest those 10 individuals, which have been operating for quite some time in the organized crime group, but also the fact that they managed to seize roughly $2 billion US dollars worth of assets, representing properties in Singapore, luxury goods, precious metals, expensive cars, and cash. So this is making this case one of the most remarkable one in the history, not only of Singapore, but globally. Obviously, the Singaporean government was shaken by this event, and they have now introduced the Inter-Ministerial Commission to assess and re-evaluate the AML regime in the country and see how it can be improved. That will have implications not only for financial institutions, but also for other obliged entities, such as property, real estate agents, precious metals dealers, and company formation businesses. This is not a standalone event, and we should expect more of this to come in the region, because lately in September this year, the UN, China, and Association of Southeastern Asian Nations signed off a plan to combat organized crime, specifically around online scams, human trafficking, and illicit gambling, because acknowledging this problem and making sure that there's a collaborative effort to tackle this problem in various countries where those groups operate. So this will ultimately result in more investigations, subsequent arrests, and will lead to regulatory scrutiny. Now, with going back to Singapore, 10 banks have managed to open accounts for those 10 individuals who were arrested, or have held accounts for the companies which were either owned or controlled by those individuals. And that is currently being reviewed and investigated by the law enforcement authorities together with Monetary Authority of Singapore to see whether there were any compliance lapses happening at this time. And if those are identified, obviously firms will need to expect repercussions. And I think that will be a very challenging time, because any events like this leads to more stringent regulation and more enforcement and supervision from regulators. And we will likely see it across the board. This is a great challenge for the firms, which have been already stretched to the limit with evolution of financial crime trends, such as a rise in digital fraud, complexity of sanctions regimes, and overall money laundering burden on them to adhere to those regulations. At the same time, it provides a great opportunity to use new ways of working and really look into how new technologies can be applied to solve for these challenges. Over the last several years, even regulators themselves have been promoting the use of regulatory technology to solve compliance and risk management areas of financial institutions' work. Such regulators in countries like Taiwan, the Philippines, Australia, Hong Kong, and Singapore have introduced different initiatives, such as regulatory sandboxes, tech sprints, hackathons, issued various guidelines and white papers in order to encourage and empower institutions to use modern technology in a sustainable manner for regulatory purposes. And indeed, we have already seen a number of financial institutions applying these technologies successfully in financial crime compliance. Predominantly, firms used machine learning algorithms to solve for effectiveness of their controls and improve the detection and prevention capabilities. At the same time, with the advent of new technologies such as generative AI, we really see new opportunities to optimize and streamline operational part of the AML compliance work in order to empower the analysts that work on AML investigations day to day, do reporting and collate information required to resolve the case. This is all being simplified, and this is all being streamlined right now with the use of generative AI. And in order to demonstrate how exactly these tools can be applied in real case examples and how firms can use those capabilities, I will gladly hand over a word to Baran, who would do a demo of the product.
All right, thank you, Leonard. Hi, everyone. My name is Baran. I'm co-founder and CEO of Flagrite. I'm just going to show you, some of the capabilities that Leonid is talking about. I'll just share my screen. Joseph, can you confirm that it's visible? All right, sounds good. So before I dive in, let me just quickly tell you what you are looking at, right? Obviously, this is the first time for almost all of you. So we are offering a centralized, no-code financial crime prevention platform for fintechs and banks. Obviously, there are a bunch of different capabilities across transaction monitoring, customer risk profiling, sanction screening, suspicious activity reports, and case management. The example we are going to give today is going to be on case management side after we detected a suspicious activity. So the focus here is speeding up and increasing the quality of investigations. So this is a standard queue view that you are probably used to. You have your cases, alerts, etc. There are a bunch of different views. You see your alert statuses. We also have some advanced workflows that you can build on, a bunch of different filters. Now we see that there are multiple alerts here for different customers, In this case, we are, capturing a B2B use case in this demo environment. And we also see what type of rule was hit, why the transactions were stopped. So here we have the operations. You can close your cases, and you see the small brain icon here. This is where we can engage generative AI. So let's take one of these examples for high velocity, which is quite standard across various organizations. For example, a user is making too many transactions within unit time, like within an hour, within a day, etc. So once you click this button, it's going to engage in an immersive user interface. Here, you see some clickable buttons. These are essentially quick query functions that you can click on, and then the UI is going to deliver the results for you in different forms. It can be a table, it can be a chart, a graph, etc. We also have an autopilot button. If you click on this, we are going to essentially tell our AI what your internal procedures or policies are. So learning from those, as well as how you close the cases on an ongoing basis, what you search for, it's going to able to deliver a specific set of queries for you to investigate a suspicious activity end to end. So if I just go ahead and click this, now it's going to go through a bunch of different things, and it's going to generate different insights that you would expect to see for a velocity alert. So let's just go to the top and see what happened. Here, we just see the outcome. So I'll just scroll all the way to the top. So we see that it kicked it off by capturing the user details and telling us who this customer is, right? Their legal entity details, where they are registered, some business details about what they do, the risk scores that are relevant to their business. And as we go down, it's showing us past alerts for this customer. And we see that they had 3 different alerts before. We captured when they made their first payment, high velocity, and they also got triggered with 2 high amount transactions. And it's also showing us transaction risk score over the last 30 days. And we see that it's a little bit volatile, right? It goes up to 75 out of 100, goes down again, and showing us the transaction history of the customer. So we can capture, for example, how many refunds they were doing, withdrawals, deposits, what type of transactions are they making. So essentially, it's trying to help us capture the nature of these transactions. And as we go down, we also see additional transaction insights in the form of a summary statistics: minimum, maximum amount, the total amount transferred, the average transaction amount across all of them, etc. Top 10 payment identifiers they receive money from. So which bank account numbers, phone numbers, or card fingerprint IDs, etc. they are receiving money from, and how many transactions and what amounts. I think you get the idea. So I'm just going to fast forward. Obviously, there are a lot of details that goes into an investigation. We see that it shows top 10 users, etc. And finally, it makes us a recommendation by capturing significant observations. So for example, it says 30% of users' transaction amounts ended in round numbers. This is higher than average. So it's also trying to attract our attention to different suspicious activity that might be adjacent to what we are trying to capture. And it also makes a recommendation on additional action items. And from here, we can say, okay, I will comply and show me CRM insights. So in a single click, you can capture this one. And now we are going to capture positive, neutral, and negative indicators for you. So you are going to be able to see, for example, the negative is they are being unresponsive when we are asking for a bank statement, for example, right? In order to complete your RFI, you need to capture documents, and you are not able to because they are not, being cooperative. And you can also move forward by doing some natural query analysis. For example, show me transaction history for the last 30 days. And I hit enter. And now it gives me the transaction history over the last 30 days. So essentially, you can speak to AI forensics just like you are speaking to a member of your team. And if you imagine all the data manipulation and processing that you don't have to do because you can just speak to it, right? Imagine how much faster and how much higher quality you could just achieve your work. So essentially, what we are trying to do here is make sure we can catch financial crime much faster, right? Without a damage of $2 billion. because the companies don't have to scale headcount in order to grow and scale their volumes and revenue. Because in the end, they're also running a business, and this is something they have to comply with. So we are trying to make it as feasible and efficient as possible for them in order for them to run their business. Now, from here, we can obviously come and close the case or alert directly. We have an additional capability here. So right now, you don't see any buttons here. And I will just select that, this is maybe a false positive. Now you see new buttons appear down here, and I will click Ask Copilot. So what we are doing now is, instead of the analyst writing the narrative themselves for 10 minutes, outlining what they have done, what the customer behavior was, since we already have the data, all the way from customer communication to customer profile, suspicious activity, etc., and what we did for the investigation, we just use the same data we have, and we put it in a cohesive, comprehensible storyline, capturing what happened, the conclusion, etc. And you can also see by clicking here what data sources were sent to the LLM. So this is very important from a data privacy perspective, right? And from here, you can also attach your documents and click confirm. And now you close the alert from here. And I'm going to show you even more capabilities. So let's go in this case. And now it's essentially the similar view showing you the case details of this customer. If you wanted to go the traditional, the standard way of manually conducting your investigation, you again have all the same details like the transaction history of the customer, the alerts, etc. And you can capture the same data from a different perspective. You can come and say, show me the CRM data. You can still look at the AI summary. You can look at the raw data, what the interaction was. You can do the same things across, various functions. You can say, show me the relationship of this customer across different actors, if they are sharing the same email address or phone number or IP address. Show me the money flow, inbound, outbound, and you can follow the money, and you can try to uncover different schemes of layering, for example, by seeing, okay, how does Jeffrey send or receive money? And now you see that Jeffrey receives a bunch of money and then always sends it to Healthy Bites, right? So you might want to uncover the relationship between Jeffrey and Healthy Bites. So there are different ways where we enable investigations. And the most important takeaway for you is we are not eliminating humans. We are eliminating tasks, right? AI is only a machine for us to become more efficient, but not to replace humans, because humans are still much, much better in applying complex judgment. That is it from me. I'm looking forward to your questions. Back to you, Joseph.
Thank you, Baran. Thanks for that. So following Baran, we are also honored to have Stephen Cutler, who is the Chief Compliance Officer at OmniPay Philippines, who will offer a unique perspective on the interplay between international security and AML efforts. I'll also be sharing your slides for you, Stephen, so you can take the floor.
Great. Thank you very much, Joseph. I really appreciate the opportunity. I really like coming in behind, it sounds funny, but coming in behind Leonid and Baran, because what they were talking about actually plays very well in the case example that I'm going to give you. And it'll help you really understand why I chose this particular case to talk about. Quite frankly, it's not an APAC or a Pacific type case. It's actually kind of played out in the Middle East and in Europe, but it has an effect on us here anyway. Leonard mentioned about the standalone events. I think this case is not a standalone event. It's one that actually will have repercussions for us wherever we go. Next slide, please. Can you change the slides? There we go. So some of the threats that I see over the next year or so will be these four areas. So they are related to money laundering. I think we've gone far beyond the simple criminal taking money from a single drug transaction, going out and buying a car. We'll talk about sports, the human trafficking, and the exploitation, online abuse and sexual exploitation of children. organized crime groups as well as weapons, and those are international in scope. Next slide, please. So some of the things that I want to make sure that we talk about, and I think that Baran brought this up very, very well, is that the AI is absolutely critical to being able to put these cases together these days. And I think it's also very, very important to understand that it actually amplifies what a thinking human being can do. It does not replace the human being. It does replace the simple tasks that we have our humans doing. So we're going to talk a little bit about sports events and how sports events can be used to launder money from a wide variety of sources. We have illicit money, whether that's through drug trafficking, terrorism financing, proliferation financing, or whatever. Also through corrupt public officials, corrupt business practices, such as what we saw with Wirecard and so on. These are incredibly incredibly difficult investigations. They require massive amounts of data, and the only way to really handle this kind of massive data is with AI that can actually help you to think your way through it, see links that you may otherwise miss. We'll also talk a little bit about how this applies to sanction and sanctions violation. So next slide, please. So what we had was a case where MTN Arancel, which is, as the slide here says, an Iranian mobile network operator. And that was owned by 51%, so a majority ownership by Electronic Development Company of Iran. They were owned by two companies that were allegedly front companies for the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, and those are sanctioned entities. How do you figure these things out? How do you actually dive deep into your ultimate beneficial owner, as you are required to do, to know your customer details that you are required to have, and the other information on how these transactions are transpiring? We spoke a little bit, I think it was Baran that spoke a little bit about the velocity of transaction. There was a massive amount of money going back and forth. We've also seen recently where the United States has said that there are tens of thousands of employees around the world who are actually sending money back to North Korea. And the North Koreans are using that money, or we would normally call that remittances, to help fund their illicit weapons manufacturing and their illicit weapons industries. Now, they're sanctioned, heavily sanctioned also. So how do you find the keys to these transactions? Because we know, for example, in the Philippines and other countries here in Southeast Asia, that remittances are massive supports to families, to the country, to its economy. Well, how do we know where that money is going? It's only through generative AI that we're going to be able to get a grip on what's going on. And so that's why I want to bring this case up. You've been able to read a little bit about this, where these, whether it's Iran or North Korea, that is heavily sanctioned, and yet it continues to receive millions of dollars, US dollars, in funding from various sources. Well, how did that happen? Well, in this particular case, La Liga, which is a Spanish soccer or football league, gave a contract or awarded a contract to MTN Arancel, and MTN Arancel would pay 10% of any profit it earned from subscribers who watched Spanish soccer on its online channel. So you get money from a legitimate source, and this then travels in through a variety of mechanisms into a sanctioned regime. And how do we deal with sanctioned companies that are actually owned by sanctioned entities? There's a lot of paper that has to be gone through, a lot of smoke that has to be walked through, a lot of smoke that has to be breathed. You really need generative AI in order to deal with all of these massive amounts of records. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So the only way that we can affect international security by doing our anti-money laundering and sanctions work, sanctions enforcement, is to pay attention to due diligence, the risk issues that we have, to make sure that our work as anti-money laundering investigators and the companies for which we work are transparent and open and can be verified by regulators and our own board of directors and so on. We have to have the ability to do third-party verifications. We must be solid in our compliance to make sure that we have internal rules and regulations on how these items are processed, but also that we are in the spirit and not just the letter of the rules, whether it is Singapore, the MAS, the Central Bank of the Philippines and the Anti-Money Laundering Council, but also European compliance groups as well. We must do education and training not only of ourselves, but also our employees so that they know how to recognize these transactions and then do the timely reporting. Only through generative AI are we able to get the reports collated, examined, and then filed in a timely manner. And that's how we can contribute to international security. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. Joseph, I think I've run out of time, so I'm going to turn it back over to you now. Thank you very much.
Thanks, David. Thank you for that. So now,
Joseph, you lost
Joseph, we lost your voice. So as the time being, I think while Joseph is waiting for the voice, we will be launching a poll for the attendance here to actually see how is it. So just a second, let me launch the polling system. Okay. You will see a poll here. You can take the times to actually choose based on which area of AML compliance do you see as the most challenging for your institutions. And there is definitely quite a few of the choice on that. We have like the transaction monitoring, and we ensuring the real-time and accurate monitoring of fast transaction volumes. We have the other one is the regulatory reporting. Some of the requirement, especially in Indonesia, Indonesia just joins FATF membership, so it will be depends on how actually we'll see. We already receiving some of the attendance polls, and some other we have the sanction screenings, keeping up with the global sanctions, especially if countries with a lot of the foreign transactions. Customer due diligence and enhanced due diligence, especially I think Stephen, in Philippines previously there was like 22 identity documents are being used, like not a single, I see a few financial institutions like not a single one have the same identity is being used. So but currently at this moment Philippines are rolling out national ID, and then hopefully it will actually like help in the CDD and EDD process as well. And we have the technology integrations, quite a lot of the new age startups, global coordinations, training and awareness, and cost management. And yep, I think do we have time, Joseph? Or do you have
yes, still time.
Cool. All right. Yeah, I'll get back it to you, Joseph.
Yeah. So the poll now, it should be your slides next.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, so just a second, let me share my screen. Please let me know if the screen is visible.
Yes, it is.
Cool. I think here we come is a very, very important subjects when we talk about the AML compliance. Like, as the compliance team, the management will ask like, how much money the return of investment if I invest some things in the compliance tool or compliance platform, and what is it in for the company, like in terms of cost benefit analysis. So as we see, like I saw just a bit background, like just a bit introduction. I'm Tommy. I'm founding BD for FlagRight. I'm covering Asia Pacific region. So I covering like from the West, India, until from the East, Japan, South to Australia and New Zealand. So I saw even in the developed countries, there's a lot of financial institutions are using traditional way of doing AML. What does it mean? Like you will have like a spreadsheet, and then like you have all your customer, and you need to edit a column to actually check whether they are like CDD, KYC compliance, or even like do they have in the high risk. So all this manual process like incur like high operational costs, like a lot of manual transaction monitoring. And in terms of like the cost itself is already very high. In terms of accuracy and efficiency is definitely, because if you are using Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel, it will be like you will not have the very complete feasibilities, and the business impact itself, it will actually save, because like if you overlook any suspicious transaction and the regulator come to you and then like, hey, you didn't like comply to this, there's a huge reputational damage there. So we have the AI driven ML methods. We can actually use AI to help make the efficient in the process. One of the process including onboarding, during the customer onboarding, when they start doing activity in your system, like the detection if there is any behavior transaction that match the money laundering pattern, and you can do investigation, because like if you do investigation manually, you need to pull all information, and even for one case you might spend the whole day only for one case. So with AI you can actually like spend more productivity into like more meaningful way. In terms of the ML comparisons, it will be hopefully with the generative AI will reduce in terms of cost of like managing the compliance, increase the detection rate, which previously not being overlooked, but now with AI you can actually get that information with a few clicks of the buttons. In terms of like how to calculate a return of investment, there's a multiple way. So as I'm showing you, this is not the ultimate way. You will have your own way. Each company will have their own calculation. But in general, the cost of saving is counted by the cost of fines that or penalties that the company might be avoided by implementing AML compliance, and the cost of potential reputational damage, because like as anything happen to the reputations, it might incur the business value of the brand itself, minus the cost of the AML compliance effort. In terms of return of investment, the benefit of the AML compliance minus the cost of the compliance, and you divide those by the cost of the compliance itself, so you can get the return of investment itself. So this is actually one of the main hard part of like communicating the return of investment, because what quite a lot of business see compliance as the stopping way for them to get the happy hour. Why I say happy hour? Because like they can get a revenue. They, as a business, businesses want to get a lot of revenue, but because compliance, they might not get the revenue because like it might be high risk. But you are actually saving them from the very, very high compliance cost it might come. So with the ML compliance tool, you can actually help them. One of it is like the benefit of cost saving to avoid that kind of potential high risk transactions, and as well as how actually you can communicate the potential danger and the potential benefit in terms of implementing AML compliance. And in the role of the automations of the AML compliance, there's a multiple gateway of how actually you implement automation in AML compliance. One of it is like you can improve the transaction monitoring. So you can go from the manual. If your financial institution already implement a solution, you can actually improve it by automating the transaction monitoring solution. The other one is like in the enhanced customer risk assessment. So you can move it from manual, or even you have the system, you can have it the automated customer risk assessment. Same as well as for KYC, KYB, and you can have the efficient sanction screening and increase operational efficiencies. So in terms of the benefit quantifying, so this is more into like the higher management, but as the team of the compliance, you can actually enforce this like, hey, as the management, you will have a better decision making with more improved transparency of information, who actually you are dealing with, what business you are dealing with, what kind of customer you are dealing with. So in a way, you will be safe in terms of the AML compliance. And yeah, this is where actually I got it. And thank you, Joseph, for that. Let me just stop sharing.
Okay, thank you for that, Tommy. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks a lot, everyone. So as we approach the final segment of our webinar, it's time for our interactive Q&A. So if you haven't already dropped in your questions, please feel free to also raise your hands, and we'll pass the mic to you to ask any questions you feel is important for you to ask. Yeah. So I have one with me here. I think this one is directed to you, Stephen. Can you hear me, Stephen?
Yep,
Perfect.
I'm in good shape. Yep.
Perfect. So it says, considering your extensive background in law enforcement and compliance, how do you anticipate generative AI impacting the strategies for combating money laundering and terrorism financing in the APAC region?
I'm actually very excited about the possibilities and where this is going to take us. My experience started actually before money laundering really became much of an emphasis at all. And so I've seen it grow for the past 20, 30 years or so. And in the old days, we all had essentially 3x5 cards put together by strings, and we had notes that investigators would make on pieces of paper and try to put those together. So the AI, the generative AI, now has allowed us to take, and I think Tommy had some really good illustrations, as well as the others, some really good illustrations of how we can take just an absolutely massive amount of information, some of which I won't even remember that we have, but the AI does, and we'll be able to put it together in a way that I can explain my case to myself to start with and my supervisors, but also then if we do actually take it to prosecution, we can explain it to the prosecutors, to judges, and if we have a jury, to a jury. And I may not have been able to include all of the information that I need to properly make a case. Even if I don't prosecute, if I simply de-risk and shut someone's account down, I still have to be able to legally justify why I'm doing what I'm doing. And the generative AI will allow me to do that because it brings, as I say, it brings all the information together in an understandable manner that frankly, when I used to have file drawers full of loose papers and stuff, I wasn't able to do that. So this is very, very exciting to be able to do these things in a much more trustworthy manner. It's not just my feelings, my emotions, but I can document why I'm thinking what I'm thinking and the way I see things. I think that's a great question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. I think we have time for one more question, just so we don't go too much over time. So, yeah, this one's for you, Baran. It says, in the context of AML compliance, how does generative AI contribute to the overall efficiency and effectiveness of operational processes? And what does that mean for financial institutions looking to adopt this technology?
Yeah, so if you look at some statistics, right, an average alert will take around 25 minutes. If you average across, large institutions like, Citi, Nubank, Revolut, or a bunch of growing startups. And if you think about a company having, let's say, 100,000 transactions per month, right, like small, and 1% hit rate, it means they have 1,000 transactions to investigate. Now, when you do the math, it yields a certain number of people that you have to hire in order to be compliant and not go out of business, because you will lose your license, you will not, deliver good quality investigations, right? And in the end, either you will get into trouble or you will not fulfill your obligations, right? It's not good. So generative AI will enable you to do everything much, much faster. We are talking about like an order of like 90% faster, right? So the scale it can deliver, you can go to 1 million transactions per month with the same number of people, which enables you as a business to actually change the narrative. This is actually great for chief risk officers and chief compliance officers, because there's the stigma around compliance being a blocker for growth, right? Like salespeople always fight against them. Hey, I want to onboard this customer. Well, great, but I don't know, they are a crypto website out of Iran, right? Just I'm making it up. So those type of frictions will also be eliminated, because now compliance can be positioned as a growth enabler instead of revenue killer, right? Because compliance people are not anti-business. They are just doing their job, right? They're actually protecting the business. So it can scale with healthy revenue instead of any revenue. Mm-hmm. So generative AI will essentially help change that narrative at a macro scale, right? And help businesses actually grow and put compliance people in the growth seat alongside their sales and growth teams.
Yeah.
Stephen, okay. Do you want to say something?
Just thinking to myself that that's exactly the point, that you as a compliance guy now become part of the profit of the company, not a drag or an anchor on the company's growth. I see my job, and my senior management sees my job, as helping us to grow and do better, so we can avoid the punishments, the reputational issues, and all these other things. This allows me to do that much, much more effectively than I used to be able to do. Like you say, I used to be Mr. No. Now I can be, well, it's not no, it's how do we get this done and still make some money on it. So from a risk and a compliance perspective, the generative AI is just going to be absolutely critical, really helping me to do my job. So thanks for your comments, because that really brought some good ideas up.
Perfect. Thanks, Baran. Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, I think we have one final question here, and this time it goes to Leonard. So it says, given the diverse financial landscape in APAC, what unique regulatory challenges do financial institutions face when integrating AI into their AML operations?
I think there is a number of fundamental things that companies need to look at when they deploy any type of technology to their anti-financial crime operations. And this is setting up a proper governance to review the models and understand them to the very detail. Make sure that there's a good audit trail of all the decisions that is being done by the algorithm that are in use, and that they can actually be explained both to the people inside the company and to any external party. And lastly, I think there needs to be a proper testing and assessment of all those systems prior to deployment, and once the systems are already in place, in order to periodically assess that they are operating as intended.
Perfect. Thank you, Leonard. And yeah, I think that's all the questions we have that we can take for now. And yes, I think that would be it for today. We've pretty much gone a few minutes over time. As we wrap up, I would like to say a big thank you for all of the speakers for joining and everyone participating today and contributing to the success of our first webinar. Thanks a lot for coming, and your engagement was very helpful and noteworthy. And remember, the conversation doesn't end here. I'll be sending up a follow-up email with some additional resources, and to also show us the result of the poll which we talked about the major AML challenges financial institutions, but our institutions face, right? So I would also be sending resources over to that and updates as to when our next event and webinar would be. So thank you everyone for joining once again today, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.